Hey Purposeful Dashers, it's Heather. I'm super excited to share with you a book review on a new to me book called The 4 Agreements. This book is written by Don Miguel Ruiz, and he talks about the Toltec wisdom behind the 4 agreements. Now, he sets this up as 3,000 years ago, a human who was living his life had a very vivid dream to understand what was actually going on here between smoke and mirrors and domestication. What's really interesting about this idea of domestication is that every single thing that we live by, or the way that we live, is from other people telling us how to live that way. And we all make agreements. Language is an agreement. When I say a word, you and I have agreed on what the meaning of that word is, and therefore we move forward under the agreement that that is what was said and that is what was meant. But there are other agreements too, like the type of job you should have, or the level of education you should get, or how many kids you should have. We're dictated in our life by this world that tells us what is the truth and what is right for us, when in reality it may not be at all what's right for us. As the title suggests, it does come down to 4 agreements, and I want to touch on those to give you a quick recap of this book. Although, no matter what my recap does or does not do for you, I do highly suggest you go and read this book yourself. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. If you are a human being on this planet, you are probably not impeccable with your word. We all say things we don't mean, we agree to things that we don't end up doing or following through on, and more than likely that's probably to yourself more so than it is to anybody else in the world. In fact, I would argue, or I would bet, that probably at work, you're impeccable to your word. Or maybe to your girlfriend or boyfriend or your spouse, ideally to your children. But if there's ever an area where somebody might fall short in this category, it's probably to themselves. Being impeccable with your word is the very first agreement in here, and that agreement alone could entirely change your life. Part of being impeccable with your word is actually not even judging yourself if you are not impeccable with your word. The author says, when you are impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you do not judge or blame yourself. Impeccability means without sin. Now, this author does not define sin the way that the religious morality does, but he says, a sin is anything that you do which goes against yourself. Hence, why judging yourself is actually going against yourself, and therefore you would not be impeccable. Impeccability, he argues, leads to life. One of my favorite quotes from the chapter is, being impeccable with your word is the correct use of your energy. It means to use your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself. Couldn't we all use a little more truth and love for ourselves? This chapter also talks about just how strong word can be. He also mentions that gossip is like black magic, and black magic can put a negative spell on you. But if you have impeccability with your word, nobody can put a spell on you because you know your truth and you don't go against yourself. When you are impeccable with your word, you feel good, you feel happy and at peace. I love that first agreement. It is so powerful because our words are so powerful. And if we can harness the power of our words to defend ourselves and make sure we're creating a space of love and self-acceptance, there is hardly any stopping you. The second agreement, don't take anything personally. The only reason you take something personally is because you agree with it. If someone were to come up to me on the street and say, Heather, you're the worst unicyclist I've ever seen, I wouldn't take it personally, because being a unicyclist isn't something that I tie myself to. However, if somebody were to come up to me and say, I hate the way that you speak, I would never hire you to do public speaking for me, I would probably take that more personally, because that's something I want and aspire to do. And so to hear anybody's words, that feeds into the self-doubt that I am already telling myself in the back of my head, makes me take that personally. But here's the thing to know. Nothing that other people do is because of you. What? That's what this author is saying. What they say what they do and the opinions they give are according to agreements that they have in their own minds. It has nothing to do with you. What a liberating thought. If somebody says something negative about me, I know it's because something in their life is going on. And so they felt the need to somehow put that out on me or bring me down or do whatever that they're trying to attempt to do. Now, it goes both ways. If they say something really positive about me, that's also in the agreement of their book of life. So I also can't take that personally either. Now, if I'm impeccable with my word and somebody is affirming something that I already know to be my truth, I can absolutely take that feedback in. There's a difference between somebody giving me true critical feedback to better myself and really trying to cut me down just to bring me to their level. But when you don't take anything personally, you can choose to follow your heart always. And when you're impeccable with your word, you know what your heart is saying because you're never at odds with yourself. What an absolute freedom to live a purposeful dash if you don't take anything personally from others. The third agreement, don't make assumptions. Can you imagine if we lived in a world of true clarity? Not assuming that we know what somebody else is thinking about the situation, but asking questions to make sure that we are on full comprehension with each other. How many less conflicts in the world would there be? 100%. The thing about assumptions is that we believe them to be 100% true. We make the assumption, we believe it to be true, we then take it personally about that truth, and then we create a whole big drama for nothing. We also make the assumption that everybody sees life the way that we see it, which just can't be true. We've all gone through different experiences, different upbringings, different values, and so there's no way that somebody sees a situation the exact same way that I do. This chapter in particular talks about not being able to change people. Raise your hand if you think you could have ever changed somebody in your past. Guilty. I definitely thought that my love could change somebody, could make them better, they would see the way. But ultimately, somebody changes because they want to be changed, and they do the work to make that change happen. Real love is accepting people the way that they are without trying to make them to change. That doesn't mean that you need to be in a relationship with every single person. Some people are your people, some people are not. But you can't go in assuming that your love will be so powerful that they'll change because of you. If they end up changing, it's because they wanted to anyway. The fourth agreement, always do your best. What a positive way to look at the world. Always do your best. Your best after a night of staying awake with your newborn is not the same best of your well-rested night coming in with a renewed energy for a project that you're working on. But as long as you bring your best, that's impeccability with your word. Under any circumstance, always do your best. No more, no less. If you always do your best, there's no way you can judge yourself. Doing your best isn't reliant on what the outcome is going to be or the reward that you're after. Doing your best is you doing it because it makes you happy. The act of doing your best is what fulfills you. Action is about living fully. And here we are taking the steps to live a purposeful dash, an intentional life. The author says, if you do your best over and over again, you will become a master of transformation. If you did your best at all times, how much further in life could you potentially be at this point? If I gave my best in every workout that I was doing, I would be in better shape right now because I would have pushed myself to the limit, to my best, every time I stepped on the treadmill, the bike, or the weight room. If I did my best as a spouse, we would have a lot more magical date nights to look back on right now. And we would be completely in sync with each other in communication because that's the best that I would bring. The best part about doing your best is that it's total focus on the present. You don't need to be concerned about the future, and you quite honestly don't need to be concerned about the past. Keep your attention on today and what your best is today on the event that you're doing currently. We have a lot of old agreements in our book of truth that we need to break. but by replacing them with new truths, new actions that bring us true happiness, we truly can live a very intentional, beautiful, full, present life. Again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. I highly suggest you get the book yourself, The 4 Agreements. And if you've had a chance to read it, I'd love to hear your recap or your thoughts below. Please make sure to subscribe below. I appreciate you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much.